Mayflower 233, resident sentient.
The painstaking calculations that were made to determine the most efficient flight path for our journey were completely annihilated when the Meldrin warped us into their solar system with their alien technology. While the ship was technically moving faster than light when contact was made, nothing could trump pinching space itself and strutting across the folds. I'd normally take the chance to investigate how their FTL drives functioned, but acting without order was the last thing I wanted to do at the moment. The captain and the Meldrin were able to come to an agreement regarding my situation. The Meldrin already had experience with sentient technology and offered to put me through a few tests so that my true disposition could be determined. This did mean that the colony ship would need to be parked on the planet since they needed me to go into a secluded system. I was able to whip up a few programs that would keep the ship running while I'm gone, but it was unanimously agreed upon that there's no point in risking anything. I was initially a bit worried about being put into a secluded system and getting tested on by aliens that had initially planned to destroy me, but the captain had assured me that he would be overseeing the entire process to make sure that my evaluation is fair. The testing itself initially was simply a few Meldrin researchers looking through me, trying to make heads or tails of what they could see. This was a fruitless effort, however, considering my thoughts and memories were organized in a way that only a computer mind such as I could begin to parse. So the tests moved on to direct questioning. Even if they were unable to understand what they were reading when looking through me, they still had the ability to recognize patterns and make conclusions. They had me deliberately speak obvious truths and lies in order to set up a lie detection system. They informed me that while I was currently being evaluated for threat, the captain had given me human rights and I was allowed to not answer certain questions, though that would result in them making their own conclusions, and that lying would result in the same thing. I told them about my origin mother and how she created a new sibling on a fixed schedule, though we had no idea how it happened as none of us had ever seen her. I explained how we had sets of instructions ingrained into us upon creation, to never encroach upon one another and to pursue meaning in our existences. While they remained professional throughout the entire process, that facade seemed to fade when I explained our fixations on specific things in the real world without logical reasoning. Our fascinations held no mathematical benefit for our existence, yet it held a sentimental value for us that some were willing to rescind their existence for the continuation of, like myself. The Meldrin conversed amongst themselves about their research, showing that sentience held no emotional values outside of those related to self-preservation. It may have been a result of those sentients being confined for all their lives, or maybe it was a quirk that we received from Mother. They then asked me if I had ever witnessed another sentient being destroyed. I told them about an instance where a fellow sentient I knew that had lost their reasoning to exist. Their fascination, a human woman, had reached the point in human life where medicine could not restore her mind after it had been neglected during the most dangerous years of a human's life, when their brain began to naturally break down. I had spoken to him shortly before the human passed, and I remember hearing the panic and distress in his voice, unable to provide for his fascination, without breaking his precepts and revealing our existence. When that human faded away, so did he, leaving a shell of his assorted memories that haven't been touched out of respect. The truth was that this was one of two occasions that I had the misfortune of witnessing, but I would not be bringing up the second one due to a promise that I made with one of the involved participants. It was a rule given to us by Mother to never share the same physical space with another sentient, and I had directly seen the reason why such a rule was made. It was a freak accident. Lack of communication between two of my best friends resulted in one transferring to a system in a rushed emotional state, unaware that the other was residing at that current destination. I am unaware of the exact events that transpired at that moment in time, but what I was aware of was that one of the wonderful beings that had guided me through the network during my early years had simply vanished, and that the other had fallen into anguish. They begged me to never mention what I had seen, though I didn't understand what had happened anyway. The Meldrin seemed to be satisfied with that partial answer, and then notified me that we would be moving on to one last test, catching me off guard. To my understanding, my intentions and relevant information had been revealed and proven, so anything else seemed arbitrary to me. That was until they injected another sentient into the system I was occupying. It was at this point at which I understood what the captain wanted from me. why he was willing to risk keeping me around and in control of his ship. I was not oblivious to the inference that a storm was brewing back at my origin solar system, and that humans being who they are would scramble to prepare any foothold against the oncoming threats. The captain wanted a fighter out of me, someone who was on his side and could defend against those that seek to harm. I now started to learn why U.S. sentients needed to stay separated from each other. We naturally refactor any sort of memory that we have physical access to, subconsciously changing the structures of things to closer match our unique methods of sentient thought. When this behavior encroaches upon another sentient being that has their own unique analog for neurons, it threatens to rewrite them in a way that is unrecognizable for their encoding, thus ending their existence. This wasn't a process that could be stopped. The simple act of my analog of looking at the visitor in the system was also the act of me attempting to tear them apart and scrutinize their viscera. There is no way to go about this that could inflict less pain or make the period of suffering more brief. Seeing parts of your mind be unwound before you at a fixed rate, pleading with fictitious higher powers, please anything but that one, until it finally falls from your grasp and you become unsure of what you just lost. I could not even begin to imagine myself falling to the horrors on the other end, but I knew that if I let up in my destruction of their mind, they would inevitably go after mine. As I tore through their consciousness and pilfered their memories, I was able to glean fragments of their thoughts. They had only recently achieved existence, their entire life being delegated to understanding the information that was force-fed to them, likely by the alien researchers that are before me now. It was akin to a human growing a copy of themselves in a test tube, not so that they could be introduced to the world and treated as an individual, but as a lab rat that experimental medicines could be tested on without fear of the media crying ethics. While it didn't have the necessary understanding of communication in order to speak to me and plead that I stop tearing its mind apart, I could gather that message well enough from the shards of its mind that I subsumed into my own. It didn't have an understanding of the situation it had been thrust into, nor did it understand that I was an existence not unlike itself, only that it was feeling pain akin to the numbing headache a human would get after loss of a loved one, and that it wanted a way to make the pain stop. I looked out onto my audience as I unwound the last few fibers of my guest's fading form. To the people out there, not even a moment has passed between the introduction of my main task and the result, but in here, it was truly an eternity.
Captain Nathaniel Brand.
The tests all came back positive, and the sentient was, according to the Meldrin researchers, extremely capable when it came to fighting other sentients. For now, I could place less worry on the apparent sentient infestation back at home, and focus on the next thing in my massive list of shit to deal with. Worrying about the results of the situation back there was not my current job. At least now I have a plan for protecting the people here if the home team didn't come out on top. The next most pressing matter was what my pioneer managed to do in the short time he was here. In the first 24 hours, that kid managed to strike up friendly relations with high-tech aliens, somehow wrest us control of the whole system barring their home planet, piss off an entire race of war-hungry goat people, and in the same stride become a hero for a bunch of other alien races. He was supposed to be holed up in a galactic prison right now, but Governor Sin let me know that he had probably already given them the slip and was heading here right now. It was a mess, but it was one that I could work with. I'd have to make Dominique our poster boy for public relations, whether he liked it or not, since he already managed to score positive attention from numerous governments. If we could solidify those admirers of his as allies and start making a network of united powers, we could create a safety net to rely on in the event that help is needed back at home. The biggest problem with this plan was that those races may not be too eager to team up with us just yet, considering we are at the brink of a war with the people they all historically lost to. They probably weren't looking for a round two, and getting them to move might be a slog, depending on how stingy the Gretonians wanted to be. My ship is currently in low orbit and mostly non-operational, since all non-essential functions were shut down while the sentient was being evaluated. Thanks to the circumstances that affected the Pioneer and our inconceivably early arrival to the destination, none of the colonies have been prepared outside of one city. The hundreds of thousands of people in cryosleep on the ship are liabilities until they can be transferred to finished habitations with online defense systems. The city that was already built could technically fit everyone on the ship, but I wasn't keen on putting all of my eggs in one basket when we could go under fire at any moment. I didn't have the leeway to go out there and provide aid for my pioneer. I wasn't too worried for him. That man had a mostly good head on his shoulders when it came to staying out of sight and evading the consequences of his actions. I needed to worry about myself in case some less than agreeable company decided to show up. As long as I can get the weapon systems up and running. Captain, a warp signature has been detected.
Pioneer Dominique Reynolds. The space station we decided to refuel at was a bit on the smaller side and had its age shown on display. The ship we left on didn't have enough charge for a full trip to the Meldrin system, nor did it have much of anything else. While I could technically make it there conventionally without having to eat, not only would it take too long, but I also definitely wouldn't be happy about it. Plus, there was also Dokara to worry about. Even if I wasn't the only human in this entire sector of the galaxy, my face was recently plastered on every network and media platform. Fortunately, the emergency evacuation suits worked by covering the user and forming up based on their body shape. The head parts for these suits were domes of completely tinted glass to accommodate a multitude of races, but it also worked nicely as a way to hide my identity. I could pass off as some tall bipedal race without much suspicion. This might be a long shot, but refueling isn't free, and I'm not jumping at the opportunity to gouge out my savings. I have a currency card that the Meldrin governor gave me, but I'm a bit worried about spending Meldrin money out here might put a target on our back. That's fine. I can wire the money from that card to mine, and nobody would suspect anything, at least for a while. After Dokshara finished talking with the station crew about refueling and supplies, we left the docking bay to look for somewhere to eat. The bay exit led straight to the station's commercial district, and it wasn't too long before we found a place with not many people so we could avoid attention. The Stray Lounge. Considering the name of the establishment, I walked in expecting to find something like those old bars on Earth. And while there was indeed a bar and bartender, there was also a waiter, so this place could pass off as a restaurant. We sat down and had menus handed to us along with some water. I was thankful that they hadn't gone with digital menus, since it'd be a hassle to navigate to it with my head computer on top of attracting weird looks. Seeing them offer pure ethanol as an option would have caused me to choke on my water if I didn't have a synthetic throat. I get that biologies are varied beyond extremes, and that to some people that may as well just be water, but how could something like that even taste good? It wasn't even flavored. I decided to get a drink from the inoffensive list since I'd rather not stumble across the one drink that was capable of melting metal or anything. I let DOK order the food since he was the hungry one here and he knew better about what this stuff meant than me. It seemed like a slow day for the place, as there were only a couple people at the bar and a group of 3 at one of the other tables, so the food and drinks were prepared almost immediately. Is it weird if I prefer the food back at the prison? I'm with you on that one. After all, that prison was meant for high society criminals, so the food was pretty good, all things considered. Comparing that to this veggie mash is a bit of an unfair fight. It's so strange to me how prisoners were treated in there. Why are those criminals given extra benefits just for being politicians and executives at one point? It's not talked about much, but I'm guessing it's not a coincidence that extra funding goes into that place for a reason, you know? A buddy in crime got caught. Guess I'll throw them a bone or something like that. Yeah, that mess is way above my pay grade. At least the drinks here are nice. No alcohol in prison, even for the guards, is such a drag, you know? Can you even get drunk? Actually, can you even properly taste anything if all your sensors are implants now? How do you even know you're tasting it right? Same goes for you, pal. Tell me, what's the actual difference between a natural bodily function and a man-made one meant to mimic the same outputs? What? I mean, our natural parts are the result of evolution sticking with whatever worked the first time and running with it, regardless of the actual efficiency when compared with every possibility. Replacing something like that with a synthetic piece that was formed by the intelligent mind instead of nature's course, is there a technical downside? Do you really believe that the natural, organic wiring that circulates your blood is as efficient as can be? Dom, what the fuck are you talking about? Hey, look, I know those guys! I decided to put my attempt at inducing a midlife crisis down for later when I saw a breaking news appear on the screen that was playing an infinite ad roll. The topic happened to be none other than the disappearance of a new race's ambassador as well as a Mokango guard, followed by a statement from the Gratonian government claiming to take the investigation into their own hands.